Hello and welcome to this video in the series of SSP weekly webinars, and in this one I'm going to look at the idea of Sketchbook. It's one of the areas that we look at in terms of really bringing the presentation that we make to our customers when we're demonstrating the credible solution that we have for them to life. Making sure that we engage them with it, that it's memorable for them, that they really understand what something is like, what something is going to do for them, what the benefits are going to be, and how it's going to work, so that when we leave them, if they're not going to make the decision there and then, they actually have the knowledge and the ability to be able to explain it to other people in the organization, to be able to understand it well enough to talk to others about it and get other people on board with it as well. It also really helps it just stay in their mind for much longer, so that when you make follow-up phone calls, when you have to go back and see the customer again, do you know what? We don't have to go through everything because they've understood an awful lot about the way that we presented the solution that we have. It is one of the areas that people struggle with a little bit more than a lot of the others. We tend to stop drawing when we leave school in a lot of cases, unless we happen to be what are often called a naturally talented artist. We tend to leave all of that sort of stuff behind us and feel a little bit nervous about drawing things, drawing pictures in front of people. It's not something that necessarily comes naturally. It's a bit like being challenged to say, would you go and sing in front of people? Now, some people will go and do that. I've got good friends of mine who will regularly go on stage and sing in front of large numbers of people. Would I want to go and do that? Over my dead body? Absolutely not. And yet, do you know what? If we did that sort of thing, it's going to be okay. Things are going to be all right. So we need to get over this little bit of fear and actually see the power of drawing. So let's have a little look at where this all fits. The single sales principle has got the three elements in there, the compelling need met with the credible solution that offers perceived value, and the sketchbook part, the drawing things element, fits into the credible solution. It's one of the 5 sizzle selling techniques that we use to bring the demonstration of our product to life, to make sure that the credible solution really comes to life in the mind of our customer that we're talking to. So it's one of those 5, and it's the least used of those 5. The others are kind of easy because props we can bring in with us and just show to people, that's fine. We can use analogies, although those are tricky for some people to use, but at least it's still just language, and we can practice that language element. Likewise with killer stats, likewise with case studies. It's all verbal stuff. So 3 out of the 5 for sure are actually accessing the auditory channel only. We are putting things out from our mouth and it's going into the ears of our customer, and that's it. The other 2, the props and the area we're going to focus on now, the sketchbook part, also bring in visual and kinesthetic transmission of information. And the more we can wrap all 3 of those together, the more powerful our presentation is going to be, because it's accessing far deeper channels of communication with our customer. So where does a lot of this come from? Well, my favourite book, if you've been on the programme that I run, I refer to this a lot. My favourite book on this subject is by Dan Rome, and it's The Back of a Napkin. And he tells the story about a really simple business model that has become very complicated and very difficult to explain because clarity had been lost when we get too close to something. As a consultant, he was able to sit down and explain the business model really simply by drawing one of the favourite diagrams that any trainer has in their toolbox, which is, of course, the triangle. And the triangle here was explaining the launch of Southwest Airlines linking up 3 non-hub airports to provide the first ever low-cost airline operation. Southwest Air was launched effectively on the back of this napkin by a really simple expression of what the company was there to do. And by explaining things really simply through the power of a simple drawing, it brings it to life for people. They suddenly get things that they didn't get before. So I'm going to look at 4 areas and actually going to do examples for you of 4 areas in which we in a sales environment can go and use Sketchbook and go and use Sketchbook successfully. The first of these areas is looking at how something works. So whether it be a physical product or a service that we're offering somebody, the example I've got behind me is the functioning of a boiler. Actually being able to draw how something works and fits together brings it to life. Because the more complicated the product is, the more difficult it is to explain it verbally without the use of any tools around you, be that either the props that we take in or very simply the sketchbook, drawing a picture of something. The second one is to make sure that we draw out the benefits of something to the customer. We talk an awful lot about making sure that the customer is really clear on the benefits of something. But it's all very well them being clear when we're in front of them, when they're engaged with us directly. If they then have to go and talk to other people in their organisation and do some of that selling on our behalf, which happens an awful lot, we need to make sure that they've got the tools available to explain it really clearly, and that they're in a position to understand it well enough to be able to explain it clearly to others. So I'll give you an example from a live client that we're working with at the moment of how this benefit selling works really, really well by using Sketchbook. The third area I'm going to look at is a process area. A lot of purchase decisions, a lot of funding criteria and those sort of things have a flowchart. I particularly love this one because it's got two of my favourite products on here, gaffer tape and WD-40. A flowchart that explains what happens at different stages and which directions you might go in. Again, can make complicated systems and processes just appear really, really simple for people. So I'll give you an example of that as well. And then the fourth example is really simple, writing numbers down. When we're talking prices with customers, when we're talking discounts, when we're talking amounts of money off, when we're talking about adding up elements, just write the numbers down. If we write the numbers down, it is more likely to stick in people's mind than it is if we just tell them a number and expect them to remember it. Writing stuff down, drawing stuff actively in front of people rather than just giving them pieces of paper or telling them things engages them so much more deeply. So I'm going to give you 4 examples of how that works right now. The first example I'm going to give you is a diagram that explains how a particular security system works. This diagram was explained to me about 7 years ago, and despite that, I remember it as if it were yesterday. And I guarantee you that at the end of this little explanation, you will be able to go and describe how this security system works to anybody that you came across as well. It's the power of the sketchbook. So let's take it step by step. The first element that exists in this security system is a smart sensor that, dependent on whether it's an indoor or outdoor environment, can be mounted on a ceiling or mounted on a pole somewhere. And the reason it's smart is that it can tell the difference between something that is supposed to be there and something that is not supposed to be there. And the key thing with the security system, things that aren't supposed to be there, are bad guys. The people coming in. If they're there when the system is set up, the chances are they've actually got a big swag bag over their shoulder and they're going in to get some stuff that they shouldn't have. So how does this sensor work and how does it tie into the rest of the security system? Well, the very first thing that it does is, as it detects that there's a person there who shouldn't be there, it sends a signal in absolute milliseconds through to a really, really powerful light bulb. An incredibly bright light which comes on in a flash. And it's an instinctive human reaction. As soon as a bright light comes, you can't resist it at all. It's simply to look up at the bright light. Go, oh, I wonder what that is. So here we've got Mr. Bad Guy with his baseball cap on, looking up at the bright light. Of course, what we've done is we've got a camera mounted directly underneath the bright light. So the bad guy's face is pointing in the right direction, is beautifully lit by the light, and a photograph is taken of him. Now, at this point, depending on which system you choose, there are 2 processes that you could go through. Number 1 is the alarm goes off and a DVD recorder or a hard drive recorder records that image for posterity. If you want to go down the absolute premium route, then we have an alternative in place. The alternative is for that to go straight out to police cars in the area, and do you know what? Those police cars with the light on top will rush to the scene with a picture of the bad guy on their dashboard. That is how the system works. Now, I will confess to you that I shouldn't need to. I am no great artist. This is a terrible drawing, but it doesn't matter how good or bad the drawing is. What actually matters is, do you understand how this works? And could you go and explain it to somebody else? And if that is true, then Sketchbook has worked. The second example I said I would go through is when we look at the benefits of a particular product or service, the benefits of a solution that we're offering to a customer. We often have a situation where there are lots and lots of different aspects of a product, lots of different features, lots of different advantages of a product, and we need to make sure that the customer is incredibly clear on how it is going to benefit them. So one of the exercises that we did with a client we're doing a lot of work with at the moment is about clustering these things. So instead of saying, here are lots of features, list, 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 here are lots of benefits, list, 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 we actually came up with clusters of them. So we said, okay, let's imagine there are 3 things that are really, really important to you in your business. It's number 1, number 2, and number 3. So, Mr. Customer, you're interested in developing this area. You're interested in developing this area. You're interested in developing this area. Let me talk to you about the product that we've got. This product has feature 1, feature 2, feature 3, and they all support the benefit that we've been talking about. It also has these 3 features, and these 3 features support this benefit area, and likewise with the third. Now, we could just talk this. We could give them a leaflet handed out. But if we can draw that for our customer in front of them, they are highly likely to be able to replicate that drawing for other people in their organisation. So if they need to go back and sell the features and the benefits of what you have talked to them about to other people in their organisation, you've effectively designed a tool to enable them to do that more successfully, to do it as well as you can do it. And if we can manage that, then actually we've created a new salesperson and given them the tools to go and do the job on our behalf. It is as simple as drawing lists and blocks and clusters. That's how we can use this for transforming features into benefits in a really, really clear way. The third example might be looking at how a process works. So I'll give you an example that we use for some funding that we've got for a lot of our training courses, where actually the funding is available, but there are hoops to jump through. So here we actually draw the process and how it works. And we might start with section number 1. What you need to do is fill in a web form. That web form then goes through to the enterprise partnership, and the enterprise partnership decide either yes or no. Can you take this any further or not? If it's no, there's nothing we can do about it. If they get to the point of yes, then what happens next? Well, the yes is then either a phone call that happens and they ring you up and talk to you about your training needs and requirements, or it could actually be a face-to-face meeting where you get around the table together and have a chat about the way that the funding could work for you. If it's successful at this stage, either via the meeting or the telephone process, then we move on to the next stage, which is to fill in an application form. And what we say to our customers is, do you know what, this application form is quite a complicated, big, long thing, but we can help by making it easier for you and filling some of those sort of things, because we've got a lot of experience in this area. Assuming there is a successful application, then 2 things happen. One is you can get up to 50% off, and the second is you now have about 7 weeks to wait until it is confirmed that you've got the 50% off. So again, not a particularly attractive looking diagram, but by talking through it and by explaining it as you draw it, it brings it to life for people and makes it much more memorable than if you literally just verbally described what that process is step by step. The fourth and final area is just using the sketchbook, using this blank white sheet in front of you to explain numbers, to get across the idea of prices. And there are a number of different approaches for this. One of the elements is to say, well, actually, the thing that you're buying from us is composed of these 4 different elements. The price of the first is £2,000. We've got an additional £500 for this element. There's another £500 for this element, and there is, of course, the delivery charge that we're going to pop on top. So the total amount of money we're looking at here is now £3,050. Now, obviously, because you're a loyal customer and so on, we're not going to do that. So actually, that's going to bring your price down to £3,000 flat. Now, obviously, what we could also do is say, do you know what? If you can get this order in by the end of this month, it's not going to be £3,000 at all. What we'll be able to do is give you a discount on top of that, perhaps give you a 20% discount, which will take it down to £2,400. That is the price that you will end up paying if you sign our contract today. So we can work through these steps. We can also obviously use percentages. We can use 7 weeks, as I used on the previous example. Numbers that come up here, we're putting killer stats in there, we're putting data into this chart, but in a way that is far, far more memorable for people. Because Because regardless of what I'm saying now, you can see this 2,400 on the chart, and that is the bit that will stick in your mind. If I was just reciting one number after another number, it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't be anywhere near as engaging, and you would go away potentially rather confused. Because the reality is, all we want the customer to remember is that bit there. All of this is just building up to effectively our punchline at the end. And that is how we can use Sketchbook to describe numbers for customers. Now, of course, the reality is we could do all of this sort of stuff without drawing things. We don't need that blank piece of paper. We don't need the whiteboard. We don't need the charts and that sort of stuff. But it just doesn't work as well. It goes back to this point of, if we want to really engage people, we need to use as many possible channels as we can to access the communication flow through to them. We need to use the auditory, the visual, and the kinesthetic channels, the idea of movement and engaging people in that process, in order to be able to really stand the best possible chance of selling ideas to them and allowing them to lodge in their mind. So my challenge to you is this. Think about parts of your product, parts of your service, parts of the proposition that you've got that are a bit more complicated than one or two words to explain. And then think about how you could most simply draw that in front of somebody. And then go away and practice it, because what you don't want to be doing is making mistakes while you're doing it. This use of the sketchbook is a fantastic opportunity to get it right in somebody's head really, really quickly and easily. Practice those sketches, do doodles all over the time until you have got it absolutely down to a T. Turn up in front of your customer, do the sketch in front of them, and you will be amazed at the results that you get. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, please do get in touch with us if you want us to cover different topics or to review certain topics with you. Just give us a shout, drop us an email and that sort of stuff, and we'll see you for the next webinar next week. Thank you.